Today we're going to be talking about, just came out 10 minutes ago, the details of the Anthropic settlement. According to Publishers Lunch, Anthropic settled its copyright lawsuit, which is brought by a class of authors, for $1.5 billion. The settlement will be split among the right holders of all the books included in the class after administration and lawyers' fees and expenses, and will pay out in 4 installments, with the full settlement finally being paid in 2 years. The court for the Northern District of California says Anthropic will pay the class at least $1.5 billion plus interest. With around 500,000 works in this class, that's going to be about $3,000 per class work. So, are you eligible to receive that payout? Thomas, what do you think?
Probably not, but $3,000 is enough to check at least.
So the eligibility seems to be like the book must have been registered with the Copyright Office within 5 years of publication before being downloaded by Anthropic. So you do need to have a copyright registered. Your book has to have been downloaded by Anthropic. Works published or registered after July 2022, they're definitely outside of the class. Some works, the cutoff is June 2021, and you have to have an ISBN or an ASIN, which if you're following novel marketing, you already have those.
So you have to have been considered notable enough by Anthropic to train on. So there's only about 500,000 books that they trained on. So you can assume that these are probably the 500,000 best-selling books or most notable books based off of whatever metric that they were using. So if your book is from before July 2022, or June 2021. So if you might, if you're in between those, but if you're before June 2021 and your book was prominent, either back in the day or today, and the copyright was registered in a timely manner. And this is the real humdinger, as we would say here in Texas, because this leads us to our next story, which is, Jonathan?
Jane Friedman from The Bottom Line put it, and I already knew this, so this was surprising to me that this was considered news. The judge ruled that a book must have been registered with the U.S. Copyright Office within 5 years of publication. Okay, so we already talked about that. Authors are finding out that their publishers haven't registered their books for copyrights, even though they're contractually obligated to do that. I thought everybody knew that. I mean, from my experience in working in traditional publishing, the author has to remind the publisher to do that. Hey, did you register for the copyright? Oh yeah, I'll do that. Because
so copyright law, often to get statutory damages, the registration of the copyright must be timely. It must be done in a timely manner. I think often it's within 3 months. I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on that, but if the publisher doesn't register the copyright in a timely manner, which isn't super expensive, but it does cost the publisher money every book, then the publisher isn't eligible for statutory damages. It's only eligible for actual damages. And this is a perfect example of why statutory damages are so critical, because if you don't have that registration, you're not in the class. You can't even try to get your $3,000 from Anthropic. And that's $3,000, I believe, per book. Which means if you've got 10 books in the class, you might have $30,000 coming your way. This actually could be quite the windfall for authors who had books that were hits back in the day, aren't selling at all anymore, but now that book is giving them $3,000 of class action money. Definitely worth researching. You can check to see if your copyright was registered by going to copyright.gov. There's a free search there. Don't use anything copyright related that's not at a .gov website. When there's a class action page, eventually there'll be a web page for the class, and we will cover that. We're going to cover the story very closely. So if you've been published for a while, keep watching Author Update. We will let you know what the next steps are. This won't pay out quickly, but $1 billion seems like a lot, but Anthropic just had a funding round, I think earlier this week, where they raised like 10 or $15 billion, and it doubled their valuation just since June or July.
Wow.
So Anthropic is very quickly becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world. And this $1 billion is going to be an operating expense for them. A sizable one, but especially if it's one that they can pay off with tomorrow's dollars, I think they'll be fine. But now every author who's been published for a while has a vested interest in making sure that the AI bubble doesn't pop, because you only get money if there's money to get.
So there's a couple questions in the chat so far.
Okay,
Can
let's throw them up on screen.
Can authors sue their publisher if they didn't do this for that $3,000? So say the publisher doesn't register the copyright, and now my book is not eligible for it, even though Anthropic did. Okay, first, could an author go after the publisher, and then should they?
That's really interesting, because it is potentially a breach of contract, which means I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for it, but
$3,000 is a breach of contract.
but $3,000 is small enough to maybe be able to go to small claims court, and you have clear contract. It's all black and white. The reason you can't get this claim is because they didn't fill the contract. You just take your contract to small claims court. Your publisher probably, actually, I don't know if you could do, you'll have to read your contract. I do have a patron tool actually to help with this. It's called Not a Literary Agent, and it's really good at reviewing contracts. And this would be a question I would ask. I would upload your contract, because your contract might have an arbitration clause, which would keep you from doing this. And it may have a, like, you can only sue in a certain state clause, and if you don't live in that state, you may not be able to do small claims court. But yeah, that's a very interesting question. There also might be a potential for class action if enough authors in a publisher didn't get their copyrights registered, they all get band together. So this is going to be interesting. This is breaking news, so I haven't seen any legal analysis on this, and hopefully your publisher was on the ball, they registered your copyright. But this is an indication of how poor, financially cash poor, a lot of publishers are, that they're cutting costs in this like very simple blocking and tackling part of being a publisher. But it's, $30-$50 a fee per book, probably that again in administrative costs. So let's say it's $100 per book. You're publishing 10 books a month. That's $1,000 they're saving. It's not a lot of money. But if they're cash poor, and many publishers are just broke, they have no cash. It's why they're not paying big advances. So
it's also a time thing. You got to remember to do it. You got to fill out the form. You got to do the stuff, and it's just administrative.
Yeah, if you're a savvy publisher, you have a person whose job that
exactly.
Is to pay them, right?
Yeah,
it's a cost.
But let me tell you, organizationally, publishers are not fantastic on the administrative side. Another question. Does the publisher get the money if they registered the copyright and have rights to the book? So does the author get that money, or does the publisher get the money?
I don't know. My guess would be the author gets the money.
Copyright should be to them, not the publisher, correct?
Yeah. So most books, the copyright is in the name of the author. We may need to bring on an actual lawyer to walk through this, or if we wait, there will be lawyers who will comment on this, and we can report on what those lawyers are saying. When we say this is breaking news, this broke in between me sending out the email about this when we went live.
It was like 5 minutes before, and we were like, oh my goodness.
We knew that the settlement details were coming. I was not expecting $1.5 billion though. And it may be, quite lucrative. Like somebody like James L. Rubart might get quite a bit of money from a deal like this. So this could be really good. All right. So we have any other questions on that before we go to the next story?
There was one other question. How do indie authors find out if their book was used? I'm not able to throw up the questions in this program. How do indie authors find out if their book has been used? Well, like Thomas said, they're going to throw up a web page, and it'll have the listing of the books that are included in the class action. Yeah. Once that page goes up, go and check it, and you'll see if you're there.
If I were the attorney setting up this class, I would make the search based off of ISBN number. And so you just type in your ISBN number and you could look it up. But again, breaking news, that page doesn't exist. Right. That website doesn't exist. So, but the first step is to see if you've even have a registered copyright. In my experience, almost no indies register their copyrights. And so you probably aren't going to be able to take advantage of this. But if you did register your copyrights and it trained on your work, maybe you can.